Well, good day to you. It is October the 12th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Science if you are new. And, of course, welcome you back if you have been here before. Now, if you want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, about why are they here, why are they coming back at this particular time, that kind of thing, if you look in the description portion of these videos, there are links that take you to websites that I think, in my own humble opinion, give you really good background information about what we talk about, so you can look into this information and get a second opinion. Now, I had to split up the videos today because I kind of got long-winded in the last video, and I have two more that I need to cover. But if you want to join the discussion, you can too. I'm always inviting people to do this. Post your comment in the comment section. Post your question in the comment section even. Or email me at searchforscience@mail.com. Now, stat and skill, I tried to cover everything that you talked about and address everything that you talked about in the last video. It was quite a long comment, which nothing wrong with that. It was just a lot to talk about, and I didn't get a chance to really read it all out because I was running out of time. Now, I want to read your comment this go around and really focus in on it because it pertains to what you talked about in the last video, and it also pertains to my reply to what I was saying in the last video. So let me read this out, and we'll get into it, and maybe we can learn some more about this in the process. Hey, let me just give you one thing to think about. Cruise companies are canceling cruises because they can't get enough fresh water to supply their ships. Also, quote, hunger stones are being discovered on German riverbanks. That's right, this is happening. Water reservoirs and rivers are running dry all over the globe. In Germany, they discovered stones and riverbeds running dry, inscribed with messages like, quote, if you find this stone, then you know that the great famine is upon you, unquote. Much of the world is in drought, and not just the western United States. Here, Lake Mead is running dry, and the Hoover Dam are at minimal levels. But also elsewhere in the world, fresh water is becoming scarce, as even the Yangtze River in China is drying up. You think about that, and what it means for food harvest, and how long until there are empty store shelves, rationing, and people straight up starving in the streets. All right, so thank you again for your comment. And what I will say is I see where you're coming from. I really do. Okay, so I think you missed the point of what I was saying in the last video, so I'll try to say it again, maybe differently. Maybe we'll have a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. You're not wrong in what you're thinking, okay? And I'm not calling you out personally on this. If I'm being critical of anything, I'm being critical of the people here in the United States. Because the calamity that you were talking about, the famine, the wars, the looting perhaps, or the unclean drinking water and those kind of things, have been going on around the world for decades. That's the point. That's why we need to institute the principle of sharing, because this stuff has been going on for decades. There are literally close to 30,000 people a day, every day, for decades, starving to death for no reason in a world of plenty that has enough food to feed them. We just don't give it to them. And we go about our day like everything is fine until we hear from somebody that the end times are coming, and then this is what's going to happen to us, and then we go into full-blown freak-out mode. But yet, it's been happening to people all over the world for decades, and we didn't care. That was my point. These people have absolutely no voice. You know, it's a crime, it's an injustice, as Maitreya would say. It's a crime that should be driven from this earth forever, because it is not necessary. But the moment that people in the United States think that it could happen to them, it becomes this huge end of times Armageddon type of thinking. Because we live our life totally about ourselves. And that's all we see here in the United States, is just about people in the United States. Everybody else just needs to bugger off. Right? But within this economic disparity that's going on between the United States and developed world and the third world, as they like to say, is, as Maitreya says, is a seed, and that seed could lead to a third world war, which would end all life on this planet. That's how dangerous it is. Because these people have put up with it for a long time, but it doesn't mean they're going to put up with it forever. Then what? And they're starting to not put up with it. They're starting to say, screw it. I don't care if there's an imaginary border between our two nations. If on the other side of that hill or that river is a possibility for a better life for my family, I'm going to take it. And they come over here. And then the people here in the United States can't, oh my gosh, millions upon millions of people are coming over across the border. Of course they are, because they're living in abject poverty and they want a life for their family. They want to provide for their family members. But they don't want to stay here. They don't care about staying in the United States. They're only coming here because this is the only opportunity that they have to live and to provide for their family. So, all the stuff about starving in the streets, the lack of clean drinking water, like I said, has been going on for a long, long time. And it can end within weeks if we just instituted the principle of sharing. That's it. So that was my point. In terms of Lake Mead drying up, they have been talking about the water that goes to Las Vegas, whether it was from the aqueducts from the California mountains or from Lake Mead or whatever, drying up for decades, because it's a city that's out in the middle of the desert with no water. The only water are these reservoirs or the aqueducts coming from the snow-capped mountains of California. And these casinos, in order to get people to get there and come there and spend their money and lose their money, hopefully, right? And they lose billions of dollars a month, in this thing, is to have huge fountains that just shoot up water into the air and all this, landscaping to make it look beautiful. And they have to power the city with all these lights that are going on all the time. And there's, just lights everywhere. Of course, that uses up all the water. It's using up way too much than they need, right? Because they're trying to get people to go there to lose their money so they can make all the money. It's all commercialization. In China, it's the same thing. They're running out of water because they're overconsumption. They're overproducing things because there are cities literally in China that are just built to make one product over and over and over and over again. Whether it's a doorknob, toilet seat, light bulb, cup, doesn't matter. Over and over and over again, because the only thing they can do is continue to produce so they can make more money. People see China as a communist country. They have communist tendencies, but it's a state-sponsored capitalism is really what it amounts to. Same thing in Russia. It's not true communism. And so they're overproducing these things because people in the United States and the companies in the United States want to make a profit, and they send it overseas because it's cheaper to make overseas in China because they don't have minimum wage. They don't need health care. They don't require or demand, proper ventilation for their factories and so forth, or a decent, living wage and all that kind of stuff. And they put it over there because it's cheaper to make. They ship it back over here to the United States, which takes power and all that kind of stuff to do, to give us crap that we don't need. That's in essence what commercialization is. And the politicians keep it in place and all those kind of things. And the people demand justice, and they come over here to try to work in these, in the United States to make money for their family. And it's an endless cycle. And it's also killing our planet off because the planet can only take so much before it just says, that's it, I'm done, which is almost where we're at right now. That's why SOP, Save Our Planet, is so important to think about, talk about, do something about, try to convince our world leaders to do something about, because we're at the precipice right now. Right now. Now, Maitreya does say, and did say, all will be well. All manner of things will be well. But we have to do something about it. So, and then the last thing I'll say is, we're still here. It ain't over till it's over. So, until that time comes, do something about this, before it is too late. The other good news is, in terms of the environment, in terms of water, as much as there's lack of clean drinking water all over the world and people die every single day. In fact, I heard years ago that there are more people in hospital beds right now and sick or dying because of lack of clean drinking water than any other reason. Now, that's not the good news. The good news is that the planet can heal itself really quickly. Two examples that come to my mind, the Deepwater Horizon, that happened, 12 years ago, I think, when the oil rig blew in the Gulf of Mexico, and there was all this oil coming out, and they couldn't get it to stop, and it was just creating a huge ecological disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. And the news was talking about how all the fish were going to eventually be dead. Maybe the Gulf of Mexico, in the worst case scenario, would mean there would be no life left in that Gulf of Mexico forever, and that kind of stuff. It would ruin all the industries, and of course, it would ruin the economies. Economies are important, probably more important than the ecological part of it, right? That's what their focus was. But what happened? Once they got the thing fixed, it eventually healed itself, and it healed itself really quickly to now you can't even tell, right? And I'm not minimalizing ecological destruction, you know what I'm saying, based on commercialization and drilling for oil where they shouldn't be drilling for oil and all that kind of stuff. I'm not minimizing that. I'm just saying the point is that the earth can heal itself really quickly. And then the other example was, during the lockdowns here in Atlanta. I mean, the air quality in Atlanta has always been bad. But within just a few days, I don't even think it was 2 weeks after we stopped, pretty much the whole city had stopped driving for the most part. The air was sweet when I walked. I mean, it was like I could taste it. It tasted sweet to me. I was taking these huge breaths. I was like, this is what clean air smells and tastes like. And I knew eventually we were going to get back into driving again, right? And the problem was the United States told all the people to lock down and bugger off. And then they gave all, $1 trillion to their donors and expected the people just to put up with it. It's a crime. It's an injustice. This is all the part of it, right? Had they given it to take care of the people, we might have been able to drive less, right? And not have to kill our environment the way it is. But I knew it was a temporary thing, and I wanted to enjoy it while I was there. And I would just go outside and sit in my deck and take huge breaths of air and go, I cannot wait for it to be like this forever. This is incredible. But it was just within a few days. So, but again, these things that you're concerned about are already happening to people right now, And I'll leave you with this funny anecdote, okay? Because this actually did happen to me a couple years ago. I was in a store, and the power went down for just about, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then came back up. And this guy looked at me and goes, oh, this is it, man. This is the end times. We're here. And I'm like, what do you mean? Right? He was just happened to be talking to the right guy, right? So he was expecting me to go, oh my gosh, yes, you're right, and get all afraid along with him, because the power went down and went back up. And he goes, look at the shelves. The shelves. We don't have toilet paper. We don't have this. Oh my gosh, this is just, this is it. And with these brownouts, oh my gosh, and that kind of stuff. And I said, it's funny. He said, this is funny. I said, yeah, it's funny. It's funny that we have this reaction in the United States. And he said, why do you say that? I said, well, my wife's from the Philippines, and at the time I had just gone to the Philippines, and I was there the year before this happened. And I said, I was sitting around a table with my family in the Philippines, and the power went out. And my sister-in-law looks at me and she goes, things are more fun in the Philippines. And then you go to the stores, and a lot of times the stores are, half filled with the shelves. They don't have everything in the shelves. And if they don't have chicken, they get beef. If they don't have beef, they get pork. If they don't have pork, they get fish. That's the way they deal with it. It's just a way of life for them. And it's always been like that for them. We're spoiled here in the United States, and then you look at gas prices. This is the other thing I'll say. People complain about $3 gallons of gas. And believe me, I'd rather pay $1 for gas than $3. Believe me, right? It's better for me, right? Individually. But if you keep it into perspective, when I traveled to Japan in 93, I remember that gas was about $4 to $5 a gallon equivalent. And that was in 93. So $4 or $5 then is like what, $8 or $9, $10 now? And yet they dealt with it. It is what it is. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It just means that this stuff's going on. A lot of this stuff, like gas prices, like supply chain issues, is a direct relation to commercialization and the problems of commercialization. The economies are collapsing. That's true. Maitreya will be the first to tell you this, because he made this prediction back in the 80s that the economies would collapse, that the markets would totally go defunct. And they went down for a time and went back up, and then went down for a time and went back up. And every time it went down, I think it was just going to keep going down and stay down. But the forces of darkness and the lords of materiality propped it back up with a bunch of money. Governments poured their money into their markets to keep the markets back up. And it kept it up for a time, and it will go back down for a time. It's not permanent. It's just buying them time, really. But the economies are collapsing because they're based on the past. They're based on selfishness, greed, and corruption for the expense of the few, or for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. Now, Maitreya and these masters, and luckily they're here teaching us now in their own way, but eventually they'll teach us more directly to build a system, especially economically and politically and so forth, that are based on the benefits of all the people. It starts with the principle of sharing. So the economies of the future will have that as a foundation, as the principle of sharing, because that's the only way all the needs of the people will be met. So all these people that talk about the end times and what it's going to look like economically and so forth, and then you got the other people that talk about how you can make money off of the crash and so forth, like you did back in the Rockefellers and the Kennedys did, during the Great Depression and so forth, and then you can become super rich like them, right? It's all selfishness. It's all based on materialism. It's all based on the belief that you are separate. Maitreya is coming here to teach us that we are one, and that our economic systems and our political systems, the healthcare systems, educational systems, and all the systems that will be put in place in the future will be based on that truth that we are one. It starts with the principle of sharing. So a lot of the problems that you're seeing, yes, you're seeing it as possibly, it could happen if we don't have another system that's put in place. It could create anarchy and all these things, right? But luckily, there is a solution for us. It's the principle of sharing. So all will be well. All manner of things will be well, according to what Maitreya says. But thank you very much for the comment. All right, now lastly, I didn't get to this question from Lenny and Kalura. Are you familiar with Edgar Casey at all? I like his message and he seems genuine to me. What woke me up recently was first reading a book called Alien Interview. It was about a crash that happened in Roswell. The nurse was able to communicate with the alien through her mind. And then the alien told her all sorts of interesting things. This led me to start looking at large megalithic structures. I find them to be very fascinating. That led me to find the work of Edgar Casey. About 85% of his predictions have come true. I really like the idea of Christianity and Buddhism are related and almost kind of the same. Do you think there's a connection between extraterrestrial beings and angels? If you get a chance, could you search The Last Supper inverted? It seems like Leonardo da Vinci made some very strange hidden images in his paintings. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Sorry for the rambling nature of this comment. I was just excited to discuss these things with other people and see what they have to think. Thanks for your time and have a blessed day. Thank you for taking the time to post this. And I don't mind the rambling nature because I ramble all the time too. Most of my videos are word salads. I am familiar with Edgar Casey. And he, in my opinion, has been very influential, in introducing people in their own way to the New Age movement. Now, I don't agree with everything about the New Age movement, but, he's at least opened people up to the idea of a New Agey kind of thing. And that's, I think, been a very positive thing. Now, whether he's been 85% accurate or not, I guess that remains to be seen. But, some of the things that he said is true, like the continent of Atlantis is rising again. That's true. That, according to the masters, according to what he said was true about evidence and proof, a written proof of Atlantis being discovered at the feet of the Sphinx in some kind of way. According to Ben, that's true too. But, Edgar Casey and Nostradamus, from a point of evolution standpoint, were about as advanced as the average world leader today. The average president, the average prime minister, perhaps, if you're somebody of note that's pretty influential in whatever area it is, whether it's literature or poetry or art or architecture or something like that or whatever, could be around that range, somewhere between the first initiation and the second, and that's about it. But not as advanced as a lot of people would think. People think that Nostradamus was, second only to Jesus, perhaps, or Donald Trump. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean. But they weren't as advanced as people think, and the information that they got, especially in terms of Nostradamus, was just coming from the astral planes, which is riddled with illusion. These masters don't work on the astral planes because of that. They don't give out any information via the astral planes. Actually, I take that back. There was one time, according to Ben's master, the Course in Miracles was given out by the Master Jesus through a medium in the astral planes, but that was it. That was the only time that ever happened. Every other time they worked directly with the disciple on the higher spiritual planes. So when someone like Benjamin Creme or Mozart or, I'm trying to think who else, Alice Bailey or something receives messages from these masters, or, a painter like Leonardo da Vinci was working with these masters, they're working on the higher spiritual planes, not the astral planes. And so the information is a lot more accurate. So you listen to, or you read Alice Bailey's books, they read like college textbooks. They're so precise and scientific in the way. And then you read something that's channeling from one of these masters, and it's soft, it's fluffy to some degree, but riddled with illusions, even if it's something that's pleasant to hear. You know what I mean? There might be some truth to it, but you'd really have to dig around to try to find it. And when somebody like Nostradamus puts out a lot of fear, it goes back to what I was saying in some previous videos. According to Ben's master, fear and joy are equally infectious. It infects people. And we don't know how far out our fear goes before it comes back. And Nostradamus was pretty advanced, like I said, toward the tail end. He was almost a second degree initiate, and which makes him much more influential than the average person. So he put all this fear out in these writings, and it affected a lot of people. Well, guess what? He is going to have to deal with that karma if he hasn't already. And it wouldn't be pleasant to deal with, I'm sure. And so but had he put out joyful thoughts, well, shoot. And I think one of the reasons why Benjamin Creme's work is not as recognizable or accepted by most people is because he's putting out this idea of joy and hope and for a future and peace, and people can't even resonate with that because they're so hung up on the fear aspect of things, you know what I mean? Which is what they want. That's what they want to absorb. It's a morbid fascination with the end of the world. It really is wild. But anyway, and then, like people like, trying to think who else, William Cooper, who maybe weren't channeling masters per se, but they put out a lot of fear too, did a lot of damage in that way. So it's just something to think about too for yourself, to not put out fear. I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying just in general for all of us, right? To not put out fear at any level, because it can really harm people in a way, and harm people a lot more than we think. Christianity and Buddhism and all religions are related. They're all coming from the same source. I give you some examples. All religions have in their text something to do with the law of cause and effect, the law of rebirth, the law of harmlessness, the law to treat people with harmlessness and love, right? Also, the truth about the awaited teacher is in every one of the religious texts. They all expect him differently. They all have different ideologies about what God is and those kind of things. And that's all coming from man, not from the source. The source is the same. The ideologies divide. And the less you become attached to those ideologies, the more you start to see that they are the same. They might be riddled with distortion. They might be riddled with misunderstanding and dogma and so forth, but the truth is there, right? Especially about the truth about the teacher coming back. I said they all expect him in a different way. They all expect him to come back at a different time, but they are all awaiting the same teacher to come back. Let's see. Are there any connection between extraterrestrial beings and angels? The angels that you might be referring to, okay? So I guess to answer your question, yes and no. It just depends on which angels you're talking about. The angels that you might be thinking of, or the devas as they refer to them in the East, are a parallel evolution to humanity. From the Master's point of view, the humanity is the sons of mind. The devas, or the angelic evolution, are the daughters of feeling. So when the Masters refer to humanity as man, they're not saying it in a misogynistic way that excludes women, in any way, shape, or puts men above women in any way. They see it energetically, that we are the masculine, we represent the masculine energy of intelligence or of God or whatever like this on this planet. The devas, or the angelical evolution, are the daughters of feeling, and they represent the feminine aspect of that same divinity. But so if you were a male angel or a male diva, well, they would refer to you as a daughter of feeling. So then you'd be like, wait a minute, I'm a guy, right? Anyway, but it's the same thing, but they're not referring to it in that way. But so the only really relationship between the angels and the devas and humanity is that when humanity goes out of whack and out of alignment, or we misuse our free will and destroy the environment in the way they do, they go out of alignment and out of harmony. And then they start to, a lot of the weather patterns become more extreme and those kind of things because of them, because they actually are responsible for the weather. They're responsible for a lot of the building aspects of nature and so forth. And when we become more aligned with our souls and bring about the principle of sharing, they will become naturally aligned and calm down. But we don't receive any messages from them in that way. And so when I talk about all the time, people being saved by accidents from angels, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the masters. And so most of the time, in fact, all the time, when people are saved from an accident from an angel, by an angel, or what they see as an angel, it's by one of these masters. Now, these masters have appeared to humanity as winged creatures from time to time under the law of recognition, but that's it. They don't normally have wings in that way. It's just so that person could recognize them as something other than just an ordinary stranger or a person. But the times that I saw Maitreya, he didn't have wings, you know what I mean? But these devas on the devic evolution can be anything from microscopic devas that make up our bodies and build, keep things in place like a chair or a table, on up to the same level as humanity and beyond. And even the soul that ensouls our planet, the logos of our planet or our solar system, is a diva on that level. So, but is there a connection between extraterrestrials and the masters? Absolutely. They work hand in hand, moment to moment, to keep us alive until we learn not to destroy our environment in the way. A lot of the early part of the hierarchy early on in human history couldn't be filled by humanity because we weren't evolved enough. And they were filled by space brothers and sisters from other planets and so forth. And even to this day, there are still masters from other planets. But anyway, and they still help us here from time to time and that kind of thing. And then lastly, about Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, when he painted his paintings, he was nearly a master. You could almost call him a master. He was that close. He's very, very advanced. And so we don't really understand the spiritual side of painting when it's done from a spiritual person such as Leonardo da Vinci or one of the other Renaissance painters. And those of us who know this information and knew Ben, because he was a painter, experienced the benefit of him telling us about some of these painters and what their paintings were about and why they painted it in this way, why they used color in the way that they did, why they structured the painting that way. It was very fascinating to listen to Ben talk about some of these painters and how they painted. He even talks a little bit about it in Maitreya's Mission Volume 3, if you want to get that book. He talks about Leonardo da Vinci as well and some of these other painters. But all the Renaissance painters that we know about were very, very, very advanced at the time. And you look at Edgar Casey and get it back to Edgar Casey and Nostradamus, right? Well, they hadn't even taken the second initiation yet, which we'll know more about it as time goes on when these masters teach us the correct way to view points in evolution and what it means. But they couldn't even control their astral vehicle the way that somebody like Gandhi or Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy, who you wouldn't think would be a prophet like Nostradamus, has been attributed to being a prophet, but that they were more advanced than he was. They could see more of life than he could. They could influence humanity for good or ill more than he could. Picasso, even as crazy as he was as an individual, but his paintings represented a person who had taken the second initiation, because he had. I mean, he was very influential over art and those kind of things. So there's a saying in the Bible, out of the mouths of babes shall speak the truth. And people think that means that at some point, probably at the end of the time of the end of the world, babies will start to miraculously start to talk, right? And it'll shock everybody because you're looking at an infant talking to you. From the master's point of view, what they meant what the Bible is meant to really mean in that regard is babes in Christ, those people who have taken the first two initiations. So people like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Picasso, I'm trying to think of others who have taken the second initiation off the top of my head. Anyway, those are four good examples of it, right? let's see, Franklin Roosevelt, even, who was closer to a third, but he was still just a second-degree initiate at the time. From the master's point of view, are the babes in Christ. They're just babies from their point of view. And Benjamin Creme used to say this all the time. Well, if they're the babies, what are the big boys like, right? And so people like Mozart, Rembrandt, Beethoven, Bach, Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln had all taken the third initiation. Very, very powerful and advanced and influential in whatever area it was, whether it was politics or art or literature or whatever, music, very advanced. But if you look at some of the Renaissance painters, they were teaching humanity about the masters. They were teaching humanity about some of the teachings of the Christ and those kind of things in painting form. And I'll leave you with this. This was, I thought, was quite extraordinary that Ben said, and just something for you to look at and consider. Rembrandt painted over 80 self-portraits of himself, and he was not what I would consider to be a nice-looking guy. Very plain, very simple. I mean, he was not a bad-looking guy, but he was just very simple. But he painted very accurately in his paintings, just wonderfully extraordinary accuracy in his paintings. And he, according to Ben, when he painted himself in these selfies, in these self-portraits, Maitreya overshadowed him at the time that he was painting those things. And Maitreya actually painted the eyes in himself. Those are the eyes of Maitreya in Rembrandt's paintings. And it was, according to Ben, was a very simple way, but one of the early ways that the masters and Maitreya started to approach humanity. It was done through art. Quite extraordinary. Same thing with Da Vinci. Da Vinci's paintings, wonderful meanings in there. Esoteric meanings. But also energetically, people don't understand the energy that's going through those paintings. That all these Renaissance painters, Leonardo da Vinci, Rembrandt, Raphael, Michelangelo and those kind of guys, their energy is sent through those paintings on a daily basis. So if you go to a museum, you can actually, according to Ben, feel energies coming off these paintings. Raphael is apparently a great healer, known by all the masters as one of the best healers that they even have amongst their group. And you can stand in front of his paintings and receive healing blessings from him. I mean, it's just, when we really know what these master artisans were doing in the Renaissance time, we will be blown away by some of their paintings and their meanings behind their paintings. And then I'll leave you with this. There's going to be another Renaissance coming in the very, very near future with another group of artists and artisans and musicians that will be doing basically the same thing, if not on even a higher level than what they were doing 500 years ago in the Renaissance. So quite extraordinary stuff to look forward to. Thank you very much for all your comments and your questions. I look forward to more in the future. I love you. Guys, keep joy close and hope even closer. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.